In Maryland, only 19 counties elect full-service sheriffs, meaning your vote directly decides who leads the law enforcement in your community. On this episode, we sit down with Washington County Sheriff Brian Albert, who's running for re-election. We talk about the 287G program, ICE cooperation, and how he plans to tackle crime and public safety moving forward. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
And we have a very distinguished guest tonight. We have Sheriff Brian Albert of the Washington County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Albert, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So we know that you are now officially running for re-election.
Yeah.
How many people have come out against you so far?
I think there's one Republican, Chucky Johnson, and then a Democrat has filed, Junior McLeod. He ran last cycle in 2022.
He has no law enforcement experience at all, right?
I don't think. I think he was in the juvenile justice system in Virginia, but I'm not positive.
What was your record of law enforcement before becoming sheriff of Washington County?
Okay, I started my law enforcement career in 1991 with DNR Maryland Park Service as a law enforcement ranger, and then 2005 we had a merger to went over to Natural Resource Police, and that's kind of when my career kind of took off. And I was FOP president, involved with that merger very intimately, and got to know the colonels of both sides, the secretaries, the governor's office, and then I rose through the ranks to captain when I retired. It was Frederick County West, and that was 2019 I retired. So I had 28 years of law enforcement service.
Natural Resources Police, for our viewers who aren't aware, is like the highly sought after job for police officers who love to hunt and fish. I mean, there's no other job like it.
It is. It was most everywhere I went, whether I was in a doctor's office or an attorney or a state's attorney, somebody they're like, you have my dream job. And I was just very fortunate to, I got out of the Air Force, and that's what I wanted to do. I just didn't have any mentor that got me to that point that gave me the roadway. So I was lucky that I got into it, and it took about 18 months to get hired in 1990, 91. And haven't looked back since.
Brian, we both were in the military. I was in the Air Force as well.
Yep.
Ethan was kind of in the military. He was in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
So
we're the ones who go in when it's time to end everything and wrap it up nicely. So, yeah.
Actually, the Navy was pretty active over in Iran today. That's for sure.
You're right. Yeah, my dad was a Navy veteran of World War II.
Mine too. Mine was he was a World War II and Korean War medic. He was actually a corpsman.
Okay.
And he told me unequivocally, go in the Air Force. He said number one, they treat their people better. Number two, they have much better food.
I always mess with the Army and the Marine guys. It was like, you're the ones that put the tent in my hotel room.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening is my son ended up going to the Marine Corps. So what did happen? Your guys' fathers got you into the Air Force, and my son was in the Marine Corps. Where did I go wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
The other night you had a really good showdown. You had a debate with Chucky Johnson, who's also running as a Republican candidate for sheriff of Washington County. And by all reports, you did very, very well. Can you give us a recap?
Well, when the first time I ran 4 years ago, and even prior to that, I ran in 2018 against the incumbent Doug Mullendore, and I didn't have that institutional knowledge that I currently have of the inner workings of the agency. And as I said in the debate, I felt that it took about 3 years for me to really get a grasp on everything that's going on. Our budget's about $50 million, which I had budgeted Natural Resource Police, but not of this size. And we come in under budget every year, so that's good. Running the budget, the detention center is obviously where my shortcomings was, and I've concentrated on it, try to get it to a point that's manageable and learn the ins and outs without ever working there, and that's kind of tough to do, but I think we have a pretty good grasp on it now. So I think my institutional knowledge probably helped me more than anything in the debate.
I think it's important that we let our viewers understand the model of what a sheriff's department is in Maryland.
There's 24 sheriffs in the state of Maryland, and it varies from state to state also what the sheriff's duties are. Here in Washington County, we are the lead law enforcement agency, so we have 120 patrol deputies, and then we take care of judicial security, which is the courthouse for circuit court. And then we also run the detention center here in Maryland. I'm one of 10 sheriffs that have a detention center under my authority in the state of Maryland. So we have three, there's basically three divisions within the sheriff's office.
And so for this next 4 years, what would be your priorities for a second term?
Well, Ethan, as I said in the debate, I want to build on what I've done so far. We fixed the retention problem that we had. When I came in, we were about 10 down on the patrol side, and we were 18 deputies down in the detention center. Anybody that knows anything about managing people, you'll know that when you're 18 down, your mandate, it's not like our guys can go home when they're done their shift. If we don't have somebody coming in to fill that job or that post, especially in the detention center, we would have to hold people over and mandate them. And our people were getting mandated and killed, just by being overworked. And that creates bad morale. And I don't think it was anyone's fault. It was just Maryland politics got in the way of public safety back in 2017, 2018. And like they currently are getting in the way of public safety. And it drove a lot of people out of the business. But we've tried to build two things that I do is family first for our employees. Take care of your family first, because without them supporting you, you're not going to be a good employee. And then customer service to our customers, whether that's someone we're responding to on the street as a call for service, or if we're taking care of someone, an inmate, or taking care of a judge in the judicial side. So customer service is our theme. Family first is kind of the motto for our employees. And I just want to build upon that. As I said in the debate, I took to the county commissioners a strategic plan. Basically, it was a 10-year plan at the time. Now we're about eight years in it. The county commissioners approved it. They thought it was a great idea to kind of plan to increase our patrol deputies and our civilian force and the detention deputies, because we're a growing county. Everyone knows that. We haven't added a deputy since 2014 prior to me coming into office, and we've added 11 patrol over and above what we were authorized prior, and we've added 8 detention deputies. So just to continue down that path, and I just want to leave it better than when I came.
So Brian, you mentioned your relationship with the county council, which obviously is extremely important for you to get your job done, which is to keep the citizens of Washington County safe. How would you categorize your relationship with those commissioners?
I would categorize it as great. It really is. I have a great working relationship with them. I think I probably built that over the years by campaigning side by side with them in 2018. And then in 2022 also, it was the same people that I campaigned with. And we just have that open dialogue. I think I have the reputation as I don't go to the county commissioners and ask for something if we don't need it. So, and we're fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money in the detention, in the sheriff's office. But like I say, we're almost $50 million budget. I know last year we came in at about $1 million under budget. So we're mindful of how we're spending that money. But I would say it's a great working relationship with the Board of County Commissioners.
And just to clarify, is it correct to say that the county commissioners, while you, the sheriff, run the Washington County Sheriff's Office, the county commissioners are who controls the purse strings? They are funding your operations. Is that an accurate statement?
That's accurate, and I would equate it. It's a little bit different, but it's no different than the superintendent of Maryland State Police. He's the secretary of the Department of State Police and runs the agency, but the legislators and the governor has his budget. And it's the same here, it's just on a smaller scale.
Brian, could you help our viewers to understand the system in Maryland where some of the counties have elected sheriffs and then some have an appointed police chief? What's the difference? And in your opinion, which is better?
Well, the bigger counties, Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Montgomery, Howard, they have a police force and an appointed chief. In Maryland, it usually follows by that being the size of the agency. The largest sheriff's department or the sheriff's office we have is Hartford County, and they have about 330 sworn. Now, there is talk about trying to go to a county police force there, maybe. I know it's just very preliminary, but they've talked about it in other places. Cumberland and Allegheny County tried it for a while, and it didn't work out so well. I feel, obviously, the sheriff's office gives the best service to the citizens because I'm accountable right to the citizens. Sheriff Jenkins says this all the time. The sheriff's the closest elected official to the citizens. And, a police chief, they answer to a town council or a city council or a county council or a county executive, to where I feel that we answer directly to the citizens of the county. And I think we give them better service that way.
And I think the fact that you're elected allows you the autonomy of actually considering the safety needs of your community as opposed to political agendas.
Yeah, and I think that's what you see here with, the recent, last week we were in Annapolis speaking out against the 287G, some of the, I call them asinine bills that been, and it's just political rhetoric, I feel. And, there was only one police chief there that testified, and there was only sheriffs and their command staff in the press conference prior to the hearing, because we can speak our mind without fear of retaliation from elected officials that we would answer to as a police chief or a county council. So we can speak our mind, and sometimes Annapolis, that's not the most favorable thing down there, but
it is refreshing. I watched the press conference for the sheriffs who had gathered for the 287G program. And just so a clarification for our viewers, gentlemen are all in support of continuing to participate in the 287G program. Recently, Governor Moore signed emergency legislation outlawing sheriffs' cooperation with ICE. What's your feelings on that?
My counterpart in Macomb County, Mike Lewis, and he's pretty vocal. He spoke out and he said it best. This is politics over public safety. And I feel that this is just Annapolis against Washington. And it's just the hatred of Donald Trump that is causing some of these bills. As I testified last week, when I was the FOP president in the early 2000s during the merger, and I would go testify, I would walk in Annapolis halls in uniform and get invited into any legislator's office. They would invite you in with open arms. Hey, how can we help you? What is it? Now, the disdain for the uniform in Annapolis is almost sickening when you're down there. And, but we're going to continue to speak our mind because I think it's the right thing to do. And hopefully I feel that good's going to prevail in this fight here coming up.
You and your other elected sheriffs are stating that the 287G program, prohibiting it, is bad for public safety. It increases crime. Obviously, the Democrats who passed the law overwhelmingly that is essentially trying to forbid you from working with ICE is saying the opposite, that actually that not working with ICE is going to increase public safety. What do you mean when you say that not working with ICE is going to actually increase crime?
Well, as currently, so the 287G under the emergency legislation, it's going to be abolished in Maryland within the next 75 days. So some of us had a disclaimer in that said, hey, you had to give a 90-day termination clause. So we're still operating under the 287G here in Washington County, but I know Frederick County didn't have that clause, so they had to immediately terminate. We were transferring a criminal that has been arrested on local charges in our county for some type of whatever it is. Let's just say it was DUI. So they were arrested here. They're awaiting trial. They served their time. And I'm just going to use 6 months as an arbitrary number. So that they serve 6 months, and we know they're going to get out tomorrow. We, under the 287G program that Washington County would participate in, we would call ICE and say, hey, John Smith's getting out tomorrow. Do you guys want to come get him? And they would either tell us yes or no. And the agreement that we had gave us 48 hours to hold that individual. And usually, since the Trump administration's taken over, ICE has been very, very responsive, and they've come usually within 24 hours. In fact, we've only had 13 that we've processed totally since July, and all the ones that they came to pick up was all within 24 hours. And they were transferred in a safe, secure location, not on the streets of our community, and it just makes everything safe in a controlled environment.
There was an individual released from prison just south of Hagerstown, and this was an illegal immigrant who had a charge or a conviction for, I believe it was murder or theft in the Carolinas, and then a rape charge in Prince George's County. And they were released, and ICE took them as a result of the cooperation. If that law had been passed before that person's release, in all likelihood, that individual with these rape charges, et cetera, would have ended up in Hagerstown.
The 287G program, jailhouse model, these people have already been charged with a criminal activity above their immigration status. So they've already been charged with either DUI or rape or whatever, assault, different crimes. It's not like these people have not committed a crime or that we're going looking for them.
Absolutely. And I give the example that this never gets reported. So July, we started the program, and we had 13 people processed. 4 of those individuals that I said, no, they're just wanted on immigration detainers. No other crime has been committed. They were just here illegally. Thanks for letting us know where they're at, but go ahead and release them. And, the concerns of the sheriffs are, and my concern, if I release somebody back into our community, and let's say they don't commit a heinous act against someone. Let's just say they're DUI and hit a family and kill them. They're not coming after the legislators that have passed these laws or the governor. They're going to want the sheriff's head for allowing them back into the community. And that's our concern. We all want the same thing. We just can't agree on how we want to do it. As you saw in Minnesota, there was no local law enforcement with those ICE agents. And that's what I feel caused the problems that happened in Minnesota to a large extent.
So you did have an opportunity to get with all of the other sheriffs who support the 287G program recently down in Annapolis. What is the overall game plan for the sheriffs who support the 287G?
Well, we are exploring legal options if we can litigate it at all. We have some people that are reaching out to national organizations to see if we can litigate it. But by no means, and we said this in our press conference, it didn't get reported much. I'm sworn in to uphold the Maryland Constitution. And if the legislators pass these laws, that's what we'll do. We're going to abide by Maryland law. Now, we might not like it, and we'll look for other ways around it. I remember a good friend that kind of become a good friend since I've been elected, Russ Hamill. He's the chief of Laurel now, but he used to be the chief of Montgomery County. He always says in these meetings, whenever he first came on the job, it was probably early 70s, and the old timers that were there then's like, we can't do our job because Miranda is in effect, and they figured out a way around that. And not that we're looking for avenues that are unlawful, but we'll figure out a way to be able to manage this process. Hopefully the legislation that was submitted last week, Senate Bill 660 and Senate Bill 791, will not get out of committee. We're hoping that we made a very good showing and a good statement that keeps those bills in the drawer in that committee.
Now, your peer in Frederick County, Sheriff Jenkins,
Yeah.
was on an episode and stated that essentially the ability of the sheriffs to work with ICE actually is preventing ICE from having a presence in our local communities, including Washington County. Do you believe that if the Democrats do succeed, put this through, and you and the other sheriffs are no longer able to cooperate with ICE, do you believe that it actually could lead to ICE agents being active in our communities, whereas they have not been?
I feel that they absolutely will. I don't think it won't be as dramatic in Washington County as it is in others. I think Frederick will obviously see that. Before in Minnesota, it was such a hot topic item. Some of the agreements were that they're going to work with ICE agents in the jails to make the safe transfer of violent criminals. So they're doing exactly what we used to do, and to kind of lower the temperature in the community. And now we're going to go the opposite way. It seems like that's what the legislators want us to do.
Well, Brian, it is an election year, and so these politicians have to send something out on their flyers about how they supported the immigrant community, even though it's counterintuitive to their safety. It actually makes the immigrant communities less safe when we stop participating in 287G.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the arguments that we heard in Annapolis on the positive side of those bills, the hearings, is that the immigrant community would be scared to call 911 or hesitant. And that's not the case. We don't do immigration status or enforcement at a local level in the communities. We respond to whoever it is, and if they're a victim of a crime, we're going to take care of it. It's so difficult to try to get the legislators to understand that.
So if there is an illegal immigrant who is a victim of a crime and calls in a 911, the responding police officer, because of the way that you and your fellow sheriffs operate with the 287G program, the responding officer does not even ask if they are an illegal immigrant or not.
We never ask immigration status. The only time we would ever get anything back is if they were wanted in another state, or for murder or a violent crime or a warrant. Immigration status is never checked in the field. And Sheriff Jenkins has a little bit different model than we do in Washington County.
As the election heats up, what is your next course of action as far as your campaign goes?
Well, I'm having a meet and greet in a golf tournament. Obviously, it takes money to do this. Advertising is not cheap. And just getting out there and about. This is a little different for me than last time. Last time that I ran, I would take off from work for a week at a time. I would take my vacation time, and I would go do signs but now I'm running the sheriff's department, so it's not so easy. I feel obligated to be there every day, and I try to be there obviously every day, and so it's not going to be as easy to take off those big blocks of time, but it's also I'm getting out there in front of the community, no different than I have in non-election years. I'm pretty involved in the community we try to do a lot of children's events, a lot of community activities. We do coffee with a cop, we do shop with the sheriff, we do trunk or treat for the kids. So we're always trying to be out there and just break down those barriers that police have with the community, and hopefully we do a good job at that. And it's just selling myself on experience and leadership and proven results. And we have to let the voters decide.
Sheriff Albert, we've actually had some of the people running against you on our show, Chucky Johnson being one of them. And I think the highest compliment was not anybody ever had a bad word to say about you. They all said you're doing a great job and you're a good sheriff. They just want to do things a little differently. So a testimony to you, sir.
Well, and I held my campaign like that when I ran against Sheriff Mullendore in 2018. I didn't have anything negative to say about him. I just wanted to do things a little different. And he ran unopposed in 2014. And at the time, that's when I decided probably I was going to run. And I was like, the people need to have a choice. That's what our democratic system's about. And that's when I filed to run in 2018. And then it ended up, I couldn't get any papers to pick this up or news cycles, but Sheriff Mullendore, being a Democrat for 16 years, and as the sheriff, he endorsed me in my 2018 campaign after we got to the general election. So I felt that was just the right way to do business.
There is a facility from ICE, ironically, but not as a result of the 287G program or anything we're talking about previously.
Mm-hmm.
Simply of a detention facility from a warehouse that was purchased. And it has become highly, highly controversial to the point that there have been protests. What concerns me, of course, is the rash of political violence. Of course, what happened in Minnesota. Also, it appears that many of these protesters, for the most part, are not local. What concerns do or don't you have in regards to what these series of protests could grow into as they continue, as they have been?
Well, obviously, Ethan, you said it. I mean, we're concerned about the rhetoric that goes on and the hatred for party politics. But as you've seen a few, we've had a couple protests at the county commissioners meetings. And we're gonna make sure people have the right to protest. That's their right, First Amendment right, and we'll protect that at all costs. But we have to have rules. And if one of our deputies get assaulted or a federal agent get assaulted, they will see the inside of our detention center, and it's just as simple as that. But they're going to get processed. They're going to get arrested and charged. And I think that's the law and order part that we need to make sure we take care of. Some of the problems in Minnesota, like I mentioned before, there was no local law enforcement there to keep the order, and nothing against an ICE agent. I've worked with FBI agents and DEA agents, ATF, ICE, U.S. Fish and Wildlife over my career. They're not street cops. They don't know how to deal with the public in that interaction that our deputies and our state troopers and our Hagerstown city officers, we deal with them every day. We know how to de-escalate just by talking, and we know how far it can go. And nothing against the ICE agents. I think they were put in a no-win situation in Minnesota because they didn't have any support from local law enforcement. So we're going to work with the processing center that is on Wright Road and try to make a place that people can come and protest if that's what they would like to do. But it's going to be orderly and nonviolent mechanisms in place that we can address those issues. We have a civil defense unit. The city has a civil defense unit. I've been in contact with some of the local sheriffs just to not really develop an MOU, but just to make sure our MOUs were up to date for Frederick, Carroll, Allegheny, some of the locals that could come if we needed the help, that they could supplement our force here in the county.
So, Brian, you talked about civil unrest, and some of the civil unrest that goes on in Washington County has a lot to do with the boardrooms, the council chambers, and the Board of Education. You have some auditors and other people that love to come in and stir things up. One of them was a guest recently, Sean Porter. What's your take on this right to protest during these meetings and the disruption that they cause?
Yeah, well, and just back to the ICE protest that we've had, and the same with Mr. Porter. We he has the right to protest. We'll protect his rights just like anyone else. And if a crime's committed in our presence, we will take appropriate action. We've had to do that a couple times, I think, in the county Board of County Commissioner meetings, and if necessary, we'll take those actions. But we're protecting everybody's rights. I don't like the disruptions. Obviously, I'd rather it be nice and smooth and easy. But hey, that's what we have to deal with. And the sheriff's office being the security basically for the boardroom and the county building at 100 West Washington Street. Sometimes it puts us in the middle of it, but we're there for security. As long as it's not a crime, we're going to allow it to happen. If for those civil rights to be so they're not violated. That's excellent. Actually, people's civil rights are really, really important. And all three of us being military veterans, including Ethan, we know that we served to allow people the right to protest and use their constitutional rights. And it is very good to hear, Sheriff Albert, that you are a constitutionalist as well. Sheriff Albert, thank you so much for being on the show on Mid-Maryland Votes. We are so happy to have you. Thank you for coming out and giving us the straight scoop. Okay, anytime. I'll come back anytime you'd like to have me.
I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
and we want to thank Sheriff Brian Albert for coming on the show. Good luck in the future, sir, and we'll see you next time on Mid-Maryland Votes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That wraps up our conversation with Sheriff Brian Albert. In Maryland, only 19 counties elect full-service sheriffs, which means voters decide who leads law enforcement. From crime and drugs to cooperation with federal agencies, these decisions shape public safety every day. The choice is yours at the ballot box. If you believe real conversations matter, hit like, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.